Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode. This week, we delve a little bit into whole foods, processed foods, and ultra processed foods, what that looks like in terms of a definition and how you can better your nutrition starting right away. I also opened up the questions to the community. Plenty of topics, but the one that we covered today was business and entrepreneurship. Something a little bit different for us, but something that is a bit of a hot topic because Dave and I have been talking a little bit back and forward. He's been helping me out with my business and things like that. So definitely a hot topic for us and something that will be hugely beneficial no matter what you're up to or who you are. Enjoy. You know that there has had to have been some sacrifice, whether it's time or nutrition or whatever it is.
Recording of myself talking about having a relationship with my chest.
I'm Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is Hacking Health Podcast. Yo! Welcome back to the podcast. We are on episode 116. What an adventure. What's going on, dude?
Well, not as much of an adventure as you trying to get this podcast working. We're running 7 minutes behind because Ben couldn't figure out his camera. But
yes, dude, I'm just saying, like, technology's difficult.
Listen, tweak my back, unfortunately, which I don't understand.
You we can't tell the internet because you're going to get all the haters on the fucking Twitter being like, I told you deadlifts, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, whatever. But I don't care. I don't care about the haters. I'll just point them to the feedback.txt on our website. But it's funny because I'd done a deload based off of your expert coach advice, which I agreed with 100%. I definitely needed a deload, and I went. Was it Tuesday? Is when I could start lifting. I was so excited because I could go downstairs. I could start to get my pull in and lift. And my back was a little tense. I was a little just not sore, but more like stiff. And I'm like, I'll warm up with some deadlifts. And I throw 3 plates on each side just to warm up. That's my warm up. I usually start with 3, then I go to 4, and I go to 5, and I go to 6. And I go to pull the first one and lift up, and all of a sudden, like, my back just starts like tweaking in pain. I'm like, what the hell? So of course, I did more sets and I did more deadlifts on top. I'm just kidding. As soon as I tweaked it, I was just like, man, that didn't feel right. So I gave it a few minutes, and then I started kind of bending down and stretching a little bit, and it just wasn't there. And it was yesterday this happened, and it does not feel good. So I am pissed because it's like 300 pounds that I literally tweaked my back on when I had already been doing a deload for 5 days. So it wasn't like I was overexerting myself or not listening to my body or anything like that. I have no idea why that happened, but I am taking it easy. I did legs today, but all I did was leg extensions, leg curls, things that didn't involve engaging my back. And that went very well. I got a good workout in, although it wasn't deadlifts and squats like I would prefer, but I'll get there hopefully next week.
What I'm hearing, I'll often try and listen between the lines. What I'm hearing is deloads are the problem.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened because I didn't have this issue before a deload.
That's true, and you were only stiff because you hadn't trained for 4 or 5 days.
That's right. So then at this point in time, the deload really just is what caused my injury. So
it's the only thing that changed,
right? Only that changed. So the lesson of the story is, don't listen to your body. Just keep pushing harder. So
yeah. Okay. Good.
We're obviously
good, solid advice.
Got a caveat because somebody be like, "Oh yeah, they make a lot of sense." And no, here, so yes. But other than that, things are good. My travel schedule's finally done. I literally flew into Wild West Hacking Fest, had an hour and a half there, and had to catch a flight that was boarding in 40 minutes after my talk for an hour drive to get to the airport, and I made it within 4 minutes to spare. So I may have some tickets arriving in the mail here sooner or later, but we'll see. But it's been good. How about you, man?
Things are good on my end. I actually today for the first day I was in the gym and I was training full body push and I was doing incline Smith machine because you recommended in my check-in feedback that I do more upper chest. So I said, okay. So I was doing incline Smith machine bench press and I was getting into it and I sort of sat in the edge of the bench and I was like, I definitely feel like I look bigger. So that was a positive. I was 226 pounds this morning. Spoiler alert for check-in for you for tomorrow, but 226 pounds. So things are good. For anybody who listened to last week, which I don't know what week this will be released, but last week whenever I was contemplating, let's call it, a mini cut, Dave just sent me feedback saying, listen, shut the fuck up and get on with it. And I said, right. We actually went into a lot of good detail. We did a lot of good comparisons on checking photos, and you talked me off the edge, which is exactly what's needed, which is always the benefit of having a second set of ears and eyes. So thank you for that. And I feel much better.
Well, on top of it, doing the photos, right? I mean, being able to relate and say, listen, we go back 8 weeks on photos. Here's where you already can see some progress in your delts and you know, your traps and your definition around your center chest there. I mean, and so we're making progress and you're still staying lean. So there's no reason to do a mini cut.
I mean, I wouldn't exactly say I'm staying lean, but that's okay. I'm not. It's fine. We don't need to get into it. It's okay. I'm okay with it.
I'm relatively lean. Okay. Relatively lean. Okay. So yes.
Good. But yeah, overall things are good. I actually had a really good call on Monday with the Hacks Group, and I want to sort of touch on this before we get into the podcast. Essentially, the conversation was around, obviously we say, 80% whole foods, 20% processed foods. And I think there's a lot of like foods that fall into a gray area. And I was listening to the most recent Diary of a CEO podcast, and they talk about like whole foods, processed foods, and ultra processed foods. So trying to separate those. Basically, the best way that I can sort of simplify the definition of each is obviously whole foods is the food is the ingredient, that's single source, something that has been alive or grown on the ground. Processed, the best way that I can say it is if like things like cheese and milk are obviously have to go some through, even like minced beef has to go through some sort of processed. So I think the best way to put it is like processed like that would be something that you could recreate in your kitchen. Like it's not a science experiment and you don't need a huge machine to do it. It's probably the best way to do it. And then ultra processed sort of falls within that. So we did a bit of a roundtable conversation with the guys and girls on Monday. And I basically got them to go into the MyFitnessPals. We had to do math. They basically had to do a math test that they weren't prepared for. So they went in to see sort of where the percentages and things fall. It was quite interesting to see sort of the feedback from everybody. Long story short, and the point of this is I used ChatGPT and I said, if I were to make a diet plan of 3,800 calories, only eating whole foods that have been unprocessed, what would that look like across 5 meals and hitting 260 grams protein? And it gave me a meal plan. So I'm going to try and not have ultra processed foods at all for a couple of weeks to see how my body responds and how it feels. I think I've seen it. It's a lot of food, but it'll be interesting to see how my body actually responds. Number one, with that amount of food. Number two, with that amount of actual nutrients and not filled with like Cocoa Pops and other insert Pop-Tarts or whatever else we've been eating. So I think that'll be a cool experiment in terms of yes, Pop-Tarts are fucking delicious, but not whole foods.
Boyd was like, when you do a Pop-Tart, you should put butter on top of it. And I just can't take myself to do that. I can't take myself.
I did do it. He did recommend that before. I did do it. Not enough that I'm willing to spend the calories on it.
So it's kind of like his recommendation of going to a Waffle House. He's like, you got to go to a Waffle House. I'm like, do I really want greasy midnight 2 a.m. food? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do Taco Bell for sure. So, everybody's got their own thing, and I respect it. It's just I'm not a big Waffle House.
I haven't been to Waffle House yet, and I assume I will have to try it at some point, but it's not somewhere like, oh my fucking God, I can't wait that I go and try a Waffle House. Yeah. So anyway, that's the update on the whole foods, processed foods, ultra processed foods. And I challenge everybody who's listening to look at the foods and see where your foods sort of fall. The podcast was, let me get it up. It was the most recent one, but that's not going to mean anything whenever this goes out. I think the title is The Junk Food Doctor. Yeah. The Junk Food Doctor. Essentially, they're saying like ultra processed foods are worse than smoking. What a fucking clickbait title that is. But yeah, a decent listen. And actually, it was funny because they were going through some foods. I was listening to a bit of it earlier on. They were going through some foods, and they were saying in the UK, there's like a traffic light system that brands foods healthy or unhealthy. I was like, I have lived here my entire life, and I have never paid attention to whether there's a green sticker, an orange sticker, or a red sticker on my food. So learn something every day. But anyway, I'm going to have a look at that. I'm going to try and I am going to limit the amount of ultra processed foods. Obviously, I don't think you can avoid foods that have been processed in some way, shape, or form, but it'll be interesting to see the difference in how I feel on that.
It's interesting when we start getting into the discussion of the whole foods topics and everything else.
It's not hope for anybody's listening as well. It's like whole foods isn't eat the whole thing. So it's like, if there's a cake, it's not that you eat the whole cake. That's not what we're talking about. A different type of whole food.
So I'm talking about like when I get a cow, I'm eating the whole cow right there. Like, all 400 pounds or 500 pounds of that cow. No, what's interesting about foods in general, and this is actually a discussion I got into with DDP. So DDP is he's gluten free, and he only eats organic food as he goes and does it. And he said that the inflammation, recovery, everything that he's able to do with his body, he attests to a lot of that, and it really did get me thinking about that. Now, I don't think I'll be able to do that fully yet, but I don't really eat that crazy in the first place. My foods are typically whole foods. I enjoy rice, potatoes, chicken, beef, pork, lean pork, hamburgers. Hamburgers are probably going to be, hamburgers aren't necessarily processed because you're just getting 90-20 or 90-10 fat or 80-20 fat.
But it's the process, like they have, you don't get a fucking cut the hamburger off the cow. So there is a process, but that's where the gray area of processed versus ultra processed food is.
Yeah, I mean, and usually I get all my meats from the local butcher shop, which is all grass fed meats, which I can definitely taste the differences in those versus what you get from kind of like commodity places that you're at. But when you're looking at trying to eat in this type of way, it's not to say that if you eat processed or ultra processed foods, you're gonna be horribly unhealthy. It's just everything's within moderation, right? Try to get most of your stuff from decent food, organic food, things that aren't necessarily, packed with a bunch of crazy ingredients that have the potential. I mean, it's crazy because I know in the United States, there's these chemicals that are often pushed into products that are banned internationally because of a lot of different
America.
And so we're like, preservatives, we're good, like it's fine. So there's a lot of things that we put in our own foods here that aren't necessarily healthy and have been widely discouraged in the rest of the world as far as like the ingredients and things that you put in there. And it's the same argument you could say with like sucralose and a lot of the artificial sweeteners. There's it's still controversial, I guess, at this point, but the amount of like aspartame and things that you would have to consume in order for it to be any type of impact, I think, on your health or cancerous is like an insane amount. You'd have to drink like 500 cans of diet soda a day for it to really, but the impact that it does have, especially if you're trying to deal with weight, is that there's a reaction that happens in your body where when you eat or drink something that's sweet and you don't have the calories there, it craves food then afterwards. So and if you're struggling with weight, diet sodas may not be the right thing for you. And largely again, that's going to be chemically produced in many cases to give you the sweetener type of effect. So it's not the greatest for you in your health. But again, in moderation, I'm drinking an energy drink right now, and DDP made the point out saying that shit you're drinking is poison, bro. So that was nice, but I'm like, yep,
fuck yeah. But I think that's it because they touched on that as well. And essentially, obviously, it was actually at Diet Coke that they were talking about, and they were talking about like the labeling on it is like this is like a perfect health food, quote unquote, and but essentially it's like our bodies work in a certain way, and it's almost like that taste of sweetness triggers certain reactions in our body, and then you don't get it would almost be better to have actual sugar and our body actually be able to process it properly than having the things that are fake and our body can't process. So yeah, it was interesting, something like that. I'm not here to say don't have this, don't have that. Everybody's going to die if you drink Diet Coke. Like it's not scare tactics whatsoever. It just sounded an interesting conversation. I just actually emailed you the 3,800 calorie whole foods. It's a lot of food. Like you need a fucking personal chef. Like I'm not going to be cooking all that shit, but there definitely would be a way of incorporating more whole foods into the day to day.
You just gotta be careful on what you eat. Like source your food, get it from the grocery store, get it from a meal prep, delivery service if you can. Now, one thing I'll say is that the United States and abroad make it much more expensive for you to eat healthy, and that sucks. Like the organic / whole food should be the cheapest out there because it's the easiest to make. By the way, you're literally grabbing it from the ground or grabbing it from an animal and popping it onto a plate. But unfortunately, with the mass production of animals and kind of how we've created this kind of ecosystem to support the large volume of folks in the world, you don't get a lot of that without having to pay a premium. So a lot of folks can't afford eating that type of lifestyle. But I will say, when you go to the grocery store, there are some. I actually was cautious in going there and finding foods that were relatively inexpensive. So I noticed that if there's any type of production to the foods, it increases. So if you get like cut up, for example, broccoli or cut up corn that's already shelled. That's going to be a premium on those. But if you go to the store and you just get the veggies directly from the veggie line, or if you go down to the local farmer that has a big shop, you can usually get large quantities of food for cheap, depending on where you're at location wise. Just last week, I went to our butcher shop, which they can tend to be pricey when it comes to like certain types of cuts, but they're ground beef and their pork and the chicken wings are all relatively inexpensive. Chicken breasts are relatively inexpensive too. So you can, go on a budget and eat really healthy. As well as right next door, they have a fruit and veggie stand where, I usually get, fresh corn, fresh, peaches, apples, and they're all much cheaper than going to the grocery store and purchasing them there. So you can go on a budget, finding local sources of meats and veggies. And some of the meal prep services are decent as well. I don't know why it's doing that. I got to figure out how to turn that off.
I don't know why mine doesn't it.
I don't know why it does that. So it's one of those things that if you're able to be cautious and kind of carve out your budget, you can do things. In addition, it's also not bad to everybody says fresh food. Well, it's also fine if things are flash frozen for a bit as well to maintain preservatives. Maybe it doesn't taste as good, but I'll be honest, I've tried flash frozen food. I don't know the difference between flash frozen and fresh, as long as you do it properly. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. Frozen food doesn't equate to being bad for you. It's just, again, the ingredients that you put into it and what you put into your body. And one of my favorite discussions on this is the book that you first told me to read when I first started up with you, which was Own the Day by Marcus, right? And he's crazy now. Like
that's thinking back when he was a normal human. Yeah,
when he was a normal like lifter and like all about food. Now he's like crazy ayahuasca journeys and like tripping all day and like talking about like the fifth dimension or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Like his podcast went crazy. Like I really tried. After like the fourth or fifth one where I'm like talking about interdimensional space gnomes, I'm like I'm out of this, man. But like whatever
cool, bro. Cold shower and space gnomes out.
He literally went from like cold plunges and weightlifting and supplements to like space gnomes and dragon creatures and anyways, so good for him. I'm glad he's found his whole thing or whatever. That's cool. I'm not gonna hate on it, but I can't listen to it. But his book Own the Day, which I highly recommend folks in the audience read. It's I read the book manually. And I also listened to it on audiobook as well because it was that good. I don't do that for any other type of book before. I don't think I've ever done before any other type of book. And one of the things that really I think hit it home for me, and I'm a skeptic, or I guess I was a skeptic, and I still am a little bit of a skeptic on the whole like gluten-free, whole foods, organic, like has to be that way for you to live a better life. The truth of the matter, though, is if you break it down to this very simple concept, then it all kind of makes sense. And you can really move a lot of the skepticism, which is your body takes nutrients, foods, and whatever it eats and replenishes itself with whatever you eat. So, you've always heard the term, you are what you eat, right? So if you're eating mass processed food, chemically, altered food with steroids and not healthy, animals, well, you're going to replenish yourself with those types of things, right? And it's not good quality product that you're putting into your body. And it's not natural in the sense that, our bodies have evolved, over millions and millions of years to become the machines that we are today based off of eating off of the land and, farming and, eating organic, foods or whole foods, right? We didn't have Pop-Tarts and things like that back then, right? And even right. And even like the old school pies and things that are made, they're made out of fruits, with some added sugar, right? They're baked handmade baked and rolled. And so these mass produced things have put a whole new wrench into our body and our ecosystem. They don't necessarily know how to deal with it, especially ones that trick you into making it sweeter, that aren't sweet, that don't give you that glucose spike. And so with Marcus's book on Own the Day that I really, really appreciated was, he's like, think of this, you're a department store, your body's a department store. And people are coming in all the time, taking things from the shelves and, removing things and going and purchasing them and using them, right? i.e. using your nutrients of your body. Well, when you replace them, are you replacing them with some really crummy, knockoff product that, isn't going to do the job? And if you start doing that, are people going to come back and actually use those nutrients the appropriate way? Or are they going to, is it going to break easier? Is it going to, not be as quality of a product as you purchase? And so you're buying something that is less good or desirable for the person. So naturally saying, your body will effectively break down or replenish itself with things that it needs to in order to, because that's all it has at its disposal, but it's not maximizing your ability to reduce inflammation, increase your immune system. Why do we have, a lot of brain fog complaints, depression? The body is this magical chemical recipe, and we're replacing it with things that it was never designed to, and especially things that aren't good in nature, aren't quality in nature to rebuild ourselves. We are going to be what we eat. And that becomes problematic as far as aging, as far as longevity, as far as our ability to recover, our ability to put on muscle mass, quality muscle mass, skin health, hair, whatever, you name it. All of these things come down to really what we eat at the end of the day, or what we put into our bodies.
Yeah, agree. I'm on board. And that's why I'm going to make an effort to eat more. I mean, it's convenience thing. Do you know what I mean? And that's why it's such a huge company. That's why it's such a huge market. But I don't think it's that much more difficult if you're conscious of making the choices to consume whole foods.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, like when you look at whole foods in general, that's you'd mentioned in a simple concept, right? Is it from the ground or is it from an animal? And where does it actually get sourced from? And I saw something that was really interesting. It was a Facebook short or YouTube short or something like that. And those are always 100% reliable, especially the alien conspiracy ones.
Yeah. What a great place to get advice from.
I'm 100% convinced that the alien conspiracy ones are all legit though. Mm-hmm. So there was an interview with an alien they had a while ago. Pretty intense. I was wrapped into it. So
we're going to get him on the podcast next week.
Yeah. We're gonna interview that alien. But they are out there, by the way. I'm showing it out there. Anyways, so one of the ones that I thought was really interesting is that, and there was a study that came out, and I'll have to find it. But this scientist was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and well decorated scientist. She has had numerous peer reviewed studies published in NIH and a number of others. And I'll get this for you, but what they've noticed is that over the years when we started using plastics in everything, the plastics themselves typically are okay, but when they get heated up, it leaks elements of that plastic into our bodies. So a good example is like Starbucks. They did a sample of Starbucks coffee, and this was just on the YouTube shorts. So I got to validate that. So let me just, I'm just going to say what was on the YouTube shorts, and I'm going to validate it for the podcast as well. But they had something like when they did the hot coffee, with it staying in the coffee for anything more than like 5 minutes, created like 25,000 nanograms of plastics that get injected into our bodies that we basically sip, right? So we're consuming all this plastic. And I heard another stat that like basically you could essentially create 2 water bottles a week based on the amount of plastic that we actually ingest into our bodies. That's crazy, right? And that's oil-based chemicals that we're essentially putting into our body. And the scientist they had on, or the doctor they had on the podcast was talking about how that's impacting men's testosterone levels directly, to where basically if you look at our like great grandfathers to now, we're 70% less at our ages around testosterone. And obviously being from a male perspective, one of the miracle hormones that we have as far as endurance, health, longevity, muscle mass, brain clarity, drive, everything else, you name it. Literally what keeps us going, we're having a 70% reduction in testosterone alone just based off of 2 generational paths. So, plastics definitely have introduced a whole new dilemma when it comes to the chemicals that we're pushing into our bodies. So it's not just whole foods. It's also, if we're going to Starbucks, the liner inside of that's plastic. Paper, by the way, leaks through, right? If you put liquid in paper, it leaks through. Well, if it's not leaking through, what does that mean? Well, they have some sort of chemical coating around it that's obviously plastic that allows it to stay into the cup. So now you have to look at what the types of things you're eating and the plastics you're introducing to your body. Same thing for, water bottles. Water bottles, you don't know if it's been sitting out in the sun for, 6 weeks. When I was in Iraq, they had pallets and pallets and thousands of pallets of water sitting out in, 120-degree sun all day long. And by the time you get to, it's all melted and warped and you're drinking, out of that. So, probably why I had low testosterone levels, when I got tested down into the 200s where I have hypogonadism. So, you look at that and you say, well, what other things can we look to optimize in our lives that starts to cut out these chemicals and things that really can harm us?
Yeah, and I actually have noticed Helmy has moved to glass Tupperwares. I haven't had this conversation. It was literally just an observation. I noticed he drinks out of a glass bottle, and the Tupperwares that he uses are now glass. In line with that, obviously, to reduce the amount of plastic. So yeah, that's more in depth in terms of things that we can do to obviously better. So today, I didn't have this conversation. You just made this as an executive decision. I put together a quick type form and I sent it into the client chat. And I said, today we're going to do a Q&A podcast. You guys ask the Qs and we'll do the A's. I've literally just opened the list and I actually just copied and pasted it, put it into ChatGPT and asked it to give us 4 topics so that they're like categorized. So I'll give you the topics. You can pick one. I'll give you the questions and we'll go through them. Cool. You're on board? Cool.
I'm on board. So real quick, though, I do want to say the doctor that I was referencing about the plastics.
Is this the alien?
It's alien. Dr. Shanna Swan. She's a PhD award-winning scientist based on Mount Sinai. Dr. Swan published more than 200 scientific papers and has been featured in extensive media coverages around the world. So she's, a subject matter expert in her own, field of domain. And that's the one that was talking about the impact of plastics, specifically on the endocrine system. It's basically endocrine disrupting in multiple areas: decrease of sperm count, decrease of testosterone. And this is, I'm just going to throw this out there. It's obviously real talk. We're talking about body parts, and I don't know the proper term, but the space between your testicles and your anus, I guess, is the taint, I guess, or the gooch, whatever. I don't know how you say it, whatever that is. I'm getting on talking. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm just trying to figure out how to talk about this, right? But they've actually measured, and think about this as a job. If you had this as a job, they've actually measured the size.
So the next time you're at work and you hate your job, think about the person that has this as their job.
Yeah, I'm trying to be without laughing here and be serious, okay? But it's a real problem. So they've actually measured the sizes based off of generational families, right, around the size between those two areas, and they've noticed a direct correlation again to plastics and the shrinking of size between those two locations, thus causing some of the issues that we're seeing now around the endocrine systems, around our testosterone, sperm counts, everything else. So plastics are actually shrinking.
What I want to know is who sits and goes, I know how this could be impacting humans. We need to measure. But I'm not sitting on that meeting. I'm out.
Well, I mean, it's obviously like they look at that as a whole picture of like what is causing this, right? And those are, causation issues that they're seeing as part of it, right? Now, did they have an exact amount or understanding of it? Probably not, but they at least have some research papers that are showing the impact to the systems there. So again, it's not good for us on that side. And who knows what, for women, and obviously, it has a lot of impact as well. So it's hitting a lot of different areas now, right? And but I think it's called,
what did you Google to find out? What did you read into Google to find out what it's called?
I should have Googled perineum first before I started talking. I think it's called perineum. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not obviously a medical expert there.
Not a doctor. Not an alien.
Yeah. We'll figure that out later. But anyways.
Tune in next week to find out what the answer is. Right. So I have 4 topics of conversation. What we can do is just pick one topic and go through all the questions, or pick a question from each topic. I'll tell you what the topics are and you can decide. Fitness and injury management, entrepreneurship and business, motivational and personal growth, nutrition and lifestyle.
I like we haven't necessarily covered the business aspect of things in a while, so I kind of like that one.
Okay, let's do it. And I think it's very apt for the conversation G and I have been having recently. So the question, let me see, I'll pick up who they're from as well, because that'll be beneficial for us. So
it is the perineum, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Thanks.
So can you block out the where I say
absolutely no.
Okay.
We'll splice it together with you talking about your body being hard, and there'll be like all fucking. I know Levi's going to do that, so stand by for the 20 minutes after this podcast go live for having that in the Discord. Anyway, so from Nikhil, what is one entrepreneurial advice you would give to a person wanting to start their own business?
Do you really want to start your own business is the first question. Okay. I think that's an important topic to talk about, because there's a lot that goes into starting your own business. One, you have to have a sense of financial stability currently. Several months of being able to support your family or you or whomever at first. This is, you got to be well thought out, methodical, planned as you go through and do it. when I started Trusted Tech for the first time, it took me 6 to 8 months to really plan, websites, sales, material, things like that to kind of come out. Now consulting, very easy because you don't have a lot of upfront capital costs, but there's so many different ways to do a business, right? Do you bring in partners? Do you look to get funding and then, dilute your company and then ultimately, lose direction of what you had in the first place, or maybe you don't, maybe you have a great partnership, but there's so many different ways of looking at it. And those are the complexities that you kind of have to figure out at first, before you start looking at a business. But the one thing I can tell you is that if you're the type of person that things are never good enough, as in, like, hey, I'm doing amazing at my job, things are wonderful, but I'm still busting my ass to be better. I'm still improving what I'm doing. I'm still reiterating and making new decisions and trying to make things better, versus somebody that, is stuck in a 9 to 5 and that's all you do and you're happy with that, right? There's some qualities and traits that I think you have to have as an entrepreneur to really get down to starting your own company. And for me, it's always been one, obsession, right? I have to put my mind and dedicate myself 100% to whatever I go into, and believe in myself that I can do that. So a lot of mindset type stuff, right? And then two, you don't have to know everything about business at all. In fact, I knew like literally nothing about starting a business. I just knew that
you wanted to do it.
I was a good hacker and I wanted to do it. And I definitely wasn't as methodical as I'm talking about right now. And I just YOLO'd it. But I had a lot of things going for me at that time, right? One, I had a lot of experience. I was already a chief security officer for a Fortune 1000 company. I'd already done consulting before, so I knew what that was like. I'd been in the military, and I already had a pretty well-established brand and reputation for my work with the social engineer toolkit, the Metasploit framework, the Kali Linux development team, ExploitDB. You name it. I was big on community. I was big on sharing. I had DerbyCon going at that time as well. So I had a lot of different things that allowed me to create a brand of myself, so that when I switched over to Trusted Tech, there was an immediate level of trust factor that went into that company that they can go with us, which, in consulting today, specifically, if you're talking cybersecurity, is much more difficult to do because there's a lot more boutique companies out there. Companies are much more picky on who they go with and establish with. So it can be a little bit difficult up front, but my biggest advice is, one, believe in yourself, have the mindset. Two, you'll learn as you go and as you grow. So don't worry about knowing everything up at first, but immerse yourself in being successful and doing your things on your own. And then the second piece is start to build your brand before you do any of this, because you're going to want to have some customers at least lined up prior to you making the jump. I got lucky. I had two folks that I reached out to, talked to them ahead of time about me starting my own company, and they were like, "Yep, I have a ton of work for you. I'll pass you a ton of work." And that kept me floating while I started to build kind of all the other components. So I was essentially working part-time for these two customers right away, had revenue coming in right away. And I was able to then start to kind of build up on that and eventually hire a second person, third person, fourth person. And, for me, it's never been about ego. It's always about finding the right person that can take away responsibilities from me so that I can focus on the things that generate revenue for the company. Whether that's speaking engagements, whether that's webinars, or code that I'm releasing and getting publicity for the company. All those things tie into kind of your marketing and messaging about why people would want to go with you and give you a shot. Those things are going to need to be center stage and focused. And the last thing I'll say, I got super lucky on the relationship and marriage side, right? I had an amazing supporting wife who is a strong leader as well. She didn't have any financial background, but she definitely ran our finances. And she decided to take over and learn. She went to Tri-C at night to learn finance. And she took over kind of the back managerial components around the business, around finance, HR, all of these other things as we started to grow. So, I didn't have to worry about an accounting system and taxes and payroll and those types of things. She figured all that out for me. So having a good partner that kind of blends where you have weaknesses can really help out a lot as well. But, the mindset, I think, is number one. And then everything else kind of falls into place after that.
I was laughing whenever you were saying about being methodical. I was like, I did not do any of that shit. I think number one is understanding why you want to do it, because I think being an entrepreneur, quote unquote, is cool. Like, it's the thing to do now. Everybody wants to do it, but I think the reality of actually doing it isn't doesn't meet people's expectations. And I saw, I think it was Dana White. I saw like a, Facebook reel, where we get all our information from, apparently, where he was talking about, people are convinced that they want to run their own company or start their own business because they want to be able to choose their own hours. They don't want to work for somebody, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, the reality of it is you end up working more hours and doing more work whenever you're doing it for yourself. And I think the thing for me is I established quite early on that I was highly unemployable, is probably the best way that I could put it. I just didn't like being told what to do. And there was always a lot of, when it wasn't my mum, because I worked with my mum quite a lot, she was the manager, the boss a lot. When it wasn't her, there was always a lot of friction within the management and myself, let's say. And there was a couple of things that I had done like over time to make money. Some of them I'll not say because I don't know if I'm fully allowed to. But there was things I'd done over time to make money. So I was like, there's definitely other ways that I can build a business or make money or whatever it is. And I think for me, I was always willing to work long hours, work hard. I didn't mind doing 60, 80, 100-hour weeks, not a problem. And I was like, if I can do this working for a shitty wage for a company that I don't really want to be in, if I can translate that into doing something for myself, surely I can be successful in it. So I just fucking left the job and then became a coach. And it was not in any way, shape or form what I imagined it to be. I can't remember how many months. I think probably about 2 months I went before having a paying client. It was actually funny. I just listened to this week's podcast that Mum and Grace hosted, and somebody asked, had I ever coached Mum? And I remember at the start, I was like, I just wanted to look busy. So I was like, anybody I could get into the gym. So I was coaching Mum like 3 or 4 times a week to look busy to try and build up clientele in the gym. And I didn't take a paying client until I think probably 2 months after I actually started coaching. So it was a case of like, there is nothing happening here except for I'm coaching people for free and looking busy. But I mean, it's all worked out in the end. But I think being willing to put the work in and understand actually why you're doing it. And I think doing it for something, and this is maybe a me personal thing, doing it for something that you get deep satisfaction in. I've definitely realized this year specifically, I get a lot of satisfaction in actually spending time with clients and having conversations with them, and not necessarily to celebrate their wins or whatever else, just about being able to bring people together. So I was sitting with Harper at dinner a couple of nights ago, and she was like, did you have a good day that day? And I was like, yeah. She says, did you just work all day? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, that's not very good. That's not very fun. And I was like, my job is fun. So being able to understand that you can actually, work and have fun and enjoy the stuff that you do as well. I feel like grateful for the position that I'm in and the people that I get to work with. But it has taken a lot of hours to get here.
It's interesting. You definitely have to be cautious of family time and when you start a business. If you're just starting off with a new family and you have brand new kids, like work will consume your life. And if you want it to be successful, it almost has to. And I'm not saying you can't be there for your kids. I'm not saying you can't be there for your family, but you're definitely going to be putting in more than 40 hours a week. You're going to be putting in way more than 40 hours. You're going to be on call all the time. You're going to be fielding calls at 2:00 in the morning. You're going to do everything you possibly can to ensure the success of that business. Again, you have to have a huge focus on, your family, making sure your family's in order when you go and actually do these types of things, because it will put a lot of burden and stress. I was actually just talking with Aaron the other night, and we were just reflecting on, how we both, took different roles kind of in our relationship when this all happened when we had kids. Aaron ran kind of the finance on the side while our kids were growing and ran the kids, whereas I was always out traveling, speaking, away from family, but I was always home on weekends. I was always there for the family. I was always there cooking and contributing whenever I could, but I was gone a lot. I was gone 70% of the time, especially in the early days of Trusted Tech. I mean, I'd be working on 2-3 engagements at the same time, writing reports in the hotel room till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, flying to go to a speaking gig and flying back and finishing up my assessment. Those are the things that I had to do to make that business successful. And it's not an easy road. I mean, especially if you don't have a substantial amount of funding up front or money in the bank, you're counting on these 2 or 3 or 4 engagements, to be able to feed your family or to feed other people's families. Right. And you go through real tough times too. When We had a period of time where, work kind of just dipped for a few months and we couldn't make payroll. So we had to take a line of credit out, right? Luckily several years ago and haven't had to worry about that again. But, you go through tough times where, the business is uncertain, trials and tribulations where you may not make it. And it's up to you to push yourself in even a higher gear to get there. And I think where I see most of the people struggle with is how do you expand and grow that business? And I see a lot of entrepreneurs that just can't let go of a lot of their responsibilities. And usually it's short-sighted. So, if I'm always busy, it's going to make me even more busy to hire somebody and train them in a certain area that I'm doing already to my liking, whether that's sales, whether that's customer calls, whether that's reports, whether that's doing the work itself. So now I have to take, already an already overloaded schedule. Let's just say I'm putting in, 80 hours a week, and I have to hire somebody to train them in another area. Well, now I'm putting in 100 hours a week. And you have to look at that though. But eventually, my workload will go down to 50 hours a week, right, or 60 hours a week. And so it's this give and tug that you have to kind of balance when you're growing a business, and to make sure you don't grow too fast, lose the quality of your work and your focus on your customers. But it's all doable, and anybody can do it. It's just you have to kind of have the right mindset and the ability to know when to push. And I help a lot of folks that have started their own businesses. I've helped a number of companies that are doing really well right now start their businesses, and I've sat down for beers and pizzas, and I have monthly meetings with people and chat through what they're struggling with and what I'm struggling with. And it's always great to have a peer system as well that can kind of help you through challenges that you may be experiencing that maybe somebody has already gone through. But at the end of the day, believing in yourself and and I will say having a good routine around health and fitness now is good. That's the only way I'm able to keep some sort of sanity with all the crazy shit that's going on in my life. But I wish I would have done that when I was going there, because I was always just like miserable and drinking and driving. You're not drinking and driving, but driving to different locations and flying to different locations.
Separate.
Yeah. I should separate. Always going somewhere, always on the fly, never a break or pause for myself. Always just burning myself out, which equate to a lot of my health elements that I ended up having. So you have to balance this out and to look back reflectively and say, how can I continuously get better? But again, if you're willing to put in the time and commitment, build your brand, reputation, you absolutely can do this anytime in life.
I agree. And I do think I have a bit of an echo going. No, I'm good. Yeah, I do think that anybody can do it, but I also think it's not for everybody. And I think that there's a definite definition between the people who take it the full way. And I think exactly what you said, like having people around you you're able to have conversations with. I would say, and maybe these contradict each other, like talk to a lot of people about it, but don't take advice from everybody. There's not. I wouldn't take advice from somebody who hasn't done it or isn't doing it, because it's fucking useless. But I appreciate the fact that you and I can have a conversation. I appreciate the fact that I have Matt and him and I are in sort of similar positions, like having someone to normalize what you're doing, because you will get to a stage where you can't have a conversation with someone who doesn't have a business or run a business or understand what it's like, because the reality of what you have to do and deal with day to day just won't match what they can have in terms of conversation. So having people that you can rely on that will give you the advice that they think will be better, like will better you, and they're not just doing it in some sort of I think that the thing about that is it's like people want to see, and maybe this is just an over here thing, I'm not sure if it's the same over here, it's like people want to see you do well but only to a certain level, so they're willing to help you out and do whatever they need to do, and then once you surpass a certain level they're like, well, fuck that guy. So be cautious of those things as well. This is an interesting one. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts on it. From Phil, what do you think We Hack Health will look like in 5 years?
So I appreciate the question. I don't know. I hate 3-year and 5-year strategies because the market takes the market takes you where you need to go. You can have a plan, but it's I think, what was it, the Mike Tyson quote that you have a plan until somebody punches you in the face, right? You never know where it'll go. So what I guess what we can say is, what our goal is with hacking your health in the We Hack Health community, and what we want to be able to do with it. But to saying what is it going to look like in 5 years, I have no idea. Just because things take a life of its own and throw you in a different direction. I would never thought I had 400 employees worldwide 12 years ago. So it's interesting. I think obviously want to continue to expand the community, continue to expand our reach to the people that we help, the people that are having just amazing transformations and being able to take, control of their mind, their body, and just have a lot of happiness with that. But I think, for me at least, it's to expand the people that we have. It's just two of us, really, right? Having other folks, I think, contribute and be part of this, to add perspective in other areas would be awesome. If I could get DDP on here on a regular case, that'd be amazing. But it's one of those things where
I day off.
Can we move this out to other industry verticals as well and help other people that struggle with the same type of ailment, right? We're doing well with communication and reaching people in the cybersecurity and IT space and things like that. But I think expanding outward is going to be awesome, and maybe some supplements down the road or something like that too, right?
I don't know. Somebody said something about a gym at some point, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I think what we need to do, and maybe this is the direction, is like we need to create what The Rock has for his gym whenever he travels, and then whenever we host events in other places, we don't need to worry about trying to find a gym because we just have it in the fucking trailer attached to a truck, and we just bring it with us. That's the goal. No, I think for me though, it's exactly like you said. It's about expanding out, and it's essentially, if you think about what you're saying about building a team, it's like, how can we take people who are already within the community and give them roles within that? Adam probably is a prime example here, and the role that he's taken on within the team and within the community. It's like, how do we find more people like that can fill a role to help us grow and expand? Because I think the best thing about it is, even two things. Number one, for the Hacks 2.0, I used the community, I used the people within the team to help me rebuild that. For today's podcast, I used the community and the team to ask the question. So it's like, I want it to be built for the community, by the community. So it's like, how can we take people on, give them roles and responsibilities to allow us to be able to grow and expand? I know, like, on a basic level, there is, additional admin and moderators in the Discord and things like that. So how can we find more of that to expand it beyond where it is?
Yeah. I mean, you just started doing, was it last year, the in-person events, right? Was it last year, the first year you started doing those? Or
last year. Yeah.
And that started expanding to something insane and crazy. Right. I mean, you don't know where things take you. And, you had just done a speaking engagement for the first time this year to all of your peers, which, you looked up to all these folks and now you're doing the same thing. And so, life takes you in a lot of, interesting and weird directions. And I think that the biggest thing to that question in 5 years, we will move where people need us, is the best way, I think, of explaining it, and to where we can impact the most amount of people to help them out.
All I'm hearing is you talking to Trish to see if I can move to Ohio because you need me there. Is that like that's me reading between them?
Ben will be in Ohio, living down the street in a farm, with a huge gym.
But I do think, like you said,
in Harper, they can stay. I'm just easy, and obviously, everyone knows it.
I do think though, it is tough because even if you asked me 2 years ago, would I be able to predict where I'm at? There's absolutely no chance, like zero chance, that I would be able to predict what we would be here. And I think that's the great thing about it. And as you said, we will move and adapt. The goal is to continue to do this, to reach more people, to help more people. I think overall what I want from Hacking Your Health and We Hack Health is it to be recognized within this industry and potentially more industries as a body of a place that can give advice and help people be better. And as we sort of discussed back and forward, like ways that we can bring other people in to allow us to look after the whole human. So how can people think better? How can they live better? How can they sleep better? How can they feel better? Like, how can we improve the human race, essentially, one person at a time? But I do think it is difficult. Like, chat this in 5 years and we'll come back to this podcast and we'll see if we've been right and we're doing fucking events on the moon or something shit. Who knows? Right. Let me see another one. Looking back, who's that one from? Probably looking back at 2023, anything you would have done differently?
Well, so I always have this debate on mistakes, right? Are errors or mistakes something that
you wouldn't have taken that deload last week? You wouldn't have tweaked your back.
Yeah, I should have done that deload last week, right? I look at mistakes as successes in the sense that you learn from your failure. And so for me, right now I'm in a great state. Companies are doing good. I'm happy. I'm in control of my weight and and my body and my mind, and my marriage is doing amazing, my family's doing amazing. Like, so yeah, I had a lot of troubles last year. You run into pissed off customers, or you're fighting fires with the breach, or something happens, a death in the family. So but there's nothing I would change. Me, largely, I think you forge your own destiny, and you learn from your mistakes, and it's the ones that don't course correct and change and don't learn from mistakes that have a tough time with success.
Agree. And I'm in a similar mindset as to, like, if I look back on things, if I had have done it differently, would I be in the place of the position that I do now? And I'm glad and grateful for the position I'm in. So I don't want to have changed. It's a difficult question to answer, I think. So I don't want to have done something that would change, me, who I am now, where I'm at, and everything that's going on. So no, I'm going to say no to that question. There is nothing that I would have done differently. The last one in the entrepreneurship and business category, I guess this one's for me. Well, you can answer this one too. Will Hacks version 2 be for both old clients and new clients? Yeah, so essentially the goal is to upgrade how things are done. So anybody who is currently in it, they will move into how the new program and how things are going to be done. There will be things that they don't need to go through and the process because they've already been through them. But generally, it's going to be an upgrade for everybody who is involved. I guess you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
agree.
Yes, I agree. I got nothing on that other than yes. I trust in Ben. Trust the process.
Yes, trust the process. I think, like I said, I do have other categories here, and I think we can probably go through them over the next couple of weeks. I think it'd be good. One's fitness and injury management, which is a hot topic for you right now, which maybe we can talk about next week. Motivational personal growth, and then obviously nutrition and lifestyle. So we can talk about that over the next couple of weeks. One thing just to take it back, and this is actually the book that you recommended that I am reading, and I'm going to read this in line with Nikhil's question, because I put it up on social media today and people seem to enjoy. And it's relatable, not just to business. It can also be for you getting your shit together and going to the gym. Not you personally, because I know you go, but just other people here or not. When you want something bad enough, you will make time, regardless of your other obligations. The truth is, most people just don't want it bad enough. They protect their ego with the excuse of time. Don't let yourself off with excuses. It's entirely your responsibility to make your dreams come true.
It's 100% true. I mean, listen.
This is a great book, by the way. A great recommendation.
I love Rework. Such a good book.
I think I like it because the chapters are like 2 pages long.
Yes. They're like 3 pages long. That is perfect for me.
Oh my god! I just read 6 chapters.
Oh, I just read a whole chapter. I'm good at 3 pages, man. I feel like I've progressed on something. No, listen. I've heard a lot of successful folks that I know in this industry, as well as in other industries, say, the whole good karma creates good karma. Well, it's more than that, right? If you take control of yourself and you treat others with respect, you work on yourself and development, good things are going to happen, right? And it's for you to recognize things that you need to change, both health-wise in your life, for your mindset, for your family, and to make those changes. Again, we've talked about this many times, but human beings really struggle with changing their patterns of behavior, especially if they're sustaining life and things are okay. Status quo is something that is very much ingrained into our ecosystem and our brains. And so we have to look at that and say, well, do we want to get better? Do we want to do something different? Do we want to do something that's more challenging? And that's where you start to really have a lot of success, I think, in your life. Surrounding yourself with good people, surrounding yourself with positive people, surrounding yourself with people that will support you and that you support them, giving people an opportunity and chance. Those are all things that will create a positive and good karma in your life. And you can absolutely make those changes right now, today. It's just a matter of you getting out of your comfort zone.
Agree. Nailed it.
Well, good podcast today.
Yeah.
I hit a lot of topics. I like the questions. Those were good.
I agree. And thanks for everybody. And I actually just jumped into the Discord. So I put in a couple of hours ago. I was like, just a reminder for everybody to do this. I'm keen to hear everybody's questions. It'll take you 30 seconds to fill out. Additional split squats for anybody who did not submit. And I've just seen that Cal said, I've done it. You better answer my question, or additional split squats for you both. To keep Cal happy, I'm only going to do this for him because I've just seen it in the chat. His question is, favorite cheat meal savory, and dessert. First of all, no idea what you're talking about in terms of cheat meal. We don't talk about that around here. We don't use that kind of language. So additional split squats for you. If you're asking me what my favorite meal is, come to Belfast and I will take you to Yugo and I will show you how to eat properly, because it is 11 out of 10. Best restaurant, best food ever. Asian fusion includes sushi, always some sort of dumplings, bao buns, and 11 out of 10 delicious food.
If you were to ask me what my favorite food is to go and eat, regardless of what that is, well, one of them is going to be Skyline Chili. I love Skyline Chili. That's like my go-to, like amazing chili hot dogs, just goodness.
Have you tried, now that you've got an industrial grade hot dog maker, have you tried to recreate Skyline Chili?
I have. In fact, you can actually buy their chili sauce, and I've done that. You know, in their it's amazing. It's not as good, but it's pretty darn close. But that's one. But I'll tell you, my actual perfect meal is, and I get this all the time when I go out to dinner with Aaron. We go to like a nice steak place, and I'll get a French onion soup, which I love French onion soup. I'll get a nice, 8 ounce or 12 ounce, depending on how hungry I am, filet, medium rare, and I'll get some asparagus, and then I'll eat a creme brulee. That is like my perfect meal. Like that right there, from start to finish, is heaven for me. So there's nothing better than that.
I would replace the French onion soup with shrimp cocktail.
Shrimp cocktail. Well, listen, I love shrimp cocktail too, but not as much as French onion.
I know.
Not as much as French onion soup.
I'm just thinking about protein target overall. That's what my
yeah. Anyways, well, thanks for listening to this week's podcast of Hacking Your Health. Tune in next week for another awesome episode. Same time, same place. And thank you all for listening. Take care.
See you next week.